and welcome to More to the Story with Molly White. I'm so glad you tuned in again this week for another incredible show about, really how abortion hurts women and men and families. This is what More to the Story is all about, is to, expose the lies of the abortion industry, to talk about the trauma that follows an abortion decision and how it affects men, the mother, the father, the siblings, the grandparents, all the family members in society, and to, reach out to women who may be considering an abortion and encourage them to choose life for their children and to provide hope and healing. There is hope and healing and forgiveness after an abortion experience. And so that's what this program and this show is all about. And we're going to be coming to you week after week, hoping to educate, to motivate, and to heal, and to give women and men an opportunity to share their abortion trauma. And so I'm going to introduce my wonderful, awesome co-host, Mary Browning. So come on in, Mary, and say hello.
Hello, Molly. Thank you for having me again today. I so enjoy doing the podcast with you.
Oh, me too. You're a wonderful co-host, and I'm so glad to have you on. So I'm glad you're here with us today.
Thank you. If you are listening and you find yourself being triggered, it upsets you what you're hearing, that is really just an invitation to step into some healing, whether that's the first step you take for healing or whether it's a step along the way. We really want to encourage you to get healing. There is hope, and you can find healing resources on operationoutcry.org. So thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Mary. And that's right. If you do feel triggered, if you get angry or emotional, we want you to stay tuned. We want you to hear these testimonies, because these are stories that can relate to you and you can relate to. You're not alone in your suffering if you've had an abortion in your past. And you don't have to stay stuck in your suffering. There is hope and healing for you, like there was for me and Mary.
But Molly, you have to understand, I did what I did at my job. Part of the reason was because I was trying to feel better about myself, which I know is very twisted and sounds weird. No, the other reason was they paid me incredibly.
Yeah.
I was making $18 an hour over 20 years ago as a receptionist.
Wow.
And so that kind of money, I did what they told me to do because I didn't want to lose that job.
Right. And I've heard a lot. Go ahead, Mary.
Did you feel calls from women that were like you when you thought you were going to die?
Just had simple questions, then I would field them. If it was more intense to where, we wouldn't tell them this, but where there was an alarm, I would give them to the nurse. And so the nurse would handle that. And the response was to go to the emergency room. I mean, that was the protocol. We did not have follow-up appointments for surgical or chemical abortions. You had to specifically request a follow-up appointment after a surgical abortion, and that we tried to push away. Chemical abortion, it was not even part of the protocol at all. If there was a complication, go to your OB/GYN or go to the emergency room. We never saw women after that. So if it was, I feel like I'm dying, or if they were saying, that they were seeing clots of a certain size, then I would pass that off to the nurse so that she could de-escalate it a little bit better. And probably part of that is because it did trigger me, and I didn't want to, be like, run,
Was it fairly common, though, that women thought they were going to bleed to death from the abortion pill? Okay.
Yeah, we've heard that so many times. And I know you did, Mary, as you were typing up the stories of women that were relayed to you. That's the common thread. They thought they were going to die. They thought they were going to bleed to death. They thought their mother or their husband or boyfriend would walk into the bathroom and see them bled out on the floor, so that's a very common thing. And I've taken notes when you were talking, and so I wouldn't forget things. But that was one thing I did write down, was the very common experiences that women thought they were going to die.
Well, and it is, you are going into labor. And I have had 6 children. And it is, my first one was a traumatic labor experience. And I was throwing up and I was having diarrhea.
Like repeat abortions. And it's very common that when a woman has one abortion, it can be very common for her to have multiple abortions. I've had 2. And I've went through some training, some childhood training, abortion related training. And the reason why is that you kind of put yourself in a situation that's dysfunctional, you're not making good decisions or whatever. But when you get pregnant again, you're either numb and you're shut down emotionally already to go and have that repeat abortion. So psychologically, you're already kind of disassociated. And so having that repeat abortion is a little easier for you. But it's also like you keep repeating a behavior until you deal with that behavior. It can't be broken until you deal with it and what causes you to do that or what the underlying message is. And so I don't remember the numbers right offhand. You may remember, or the percentages.
Yeah, I think it's 50%. 50% of women that have one abortion will have a second or third abortion.
I just remember sitting in my bedroom, my master bedroom, sitting on my queen bed, and I just started to cry because I said, Lord, why would you make me with no value? I don't have anything to give to anyone. So why would you make me without purpose? Like, I got mad because I'm like, how could you create someone with no purpose? Why don't I have anything to give to someone?
Wow.
And so, we came back because it was a group of women, but thankfully the Lord just only had a handful of women to join that meeting, because I was like, I'm not going to talk about this because I had never heard anyone talk about this, let alone I had never seen a person of color, talk about this. And so we went back to the meeting and we had to give the answers of what we put in that chapter. And at the time, my pastor didn't know, but I had this pain in my stomach almost as a reminder of what I had done. It would be a sharp pain every now and then, almost kind of like the enemy saying, this is what you have to deal with. I just remember I had started going to church, but I was having much more turmoil and torment, from other decisions that I had made, because in the midst of me having my abortion, I was also dealing with the fact that I had been in same-sex relationships. So all of these things were taking a toll, on me spiritually. And it was like life had been sucked out of me physically, but spiritually, life was being sucked out of me as well. So both ways, life was just draining me. I just remember showing up to church week after week, just hoping someone would hear the cry, of my silent actions. And so I just remember one day my pastor, before she introduced us to this book, she saw me in church and she said, I see death in your eyes. The first question was, what is it that you have in your closet that you need to clean out? And when I made it to Georgia in 2006, my grandmother passed away, and she was like my rock. And so I didn't know that I was also dealing with depression of her passing away as well. So
it triggers, that triggers your trauma. I mean, it's when you have a loss, it kind of triggers the losses you've had before.
Exactly.
If they haven't been dealt with, yeah.
Yes. So I knew that I needed to clean that depression out, and I knew that I needed to clean that same piece of abortion. It was just like the Lord speaking to me that it's now time to clean abortion. She doesn't love me. I said, every time I pick her up, she starts to cry, but when my mom holds her, she stops crying. And that was a lie that the enemy had told me, like, Steve, because of your decision, like, she's not going to love you. And in my mind now, it wasn't funny at the time because, your mind, it's a different, when you're in it, when you're in that hell, it's a different mind frame that you have.
Right.
But now that I'm on the other side, it was like, how could possibly a 2-week-old know to, like, she doesn't know what love is, but that's
all they want is milk, a clean diaper, and snuggling,
Exactly. But no one had even talked to me. I didn't have that education of babies can pick up on the stress that you're holding,
right,
feeling in your body, and no one had spoken to me about postpartum depression and all the things your body would go through after having a child. So it was just like, everything was just fun. I asked her if she knew what an abortion was. And so she gave me her definition of what abortion was. And so I told her what I had done and, you know, kind of went through the story, you know, of what we did. And she said, well, thank you for choosing me.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And so it was like, you know, another level of God's love that I know that I needed to, you know, affirm, you know, from her, you know, and just to think about the wisdom of God, the compassion of God just flowing through her to say that. And so it just sparked so much, you know, inside of me. And I'm so grateful to God because it was nobody but the Holy Spirit who got me through. Like, I didn't know that there were support groups for post-abortion. I didn't know that there was help for these things. But in the midst of that, the Lord helped me to get to know Him through my healing. Like, it was almost kind of like it just was a one-on-one, just me, Him, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, just helping me get through, you know, this. And I have a lot of people that say, what group did you attend? I'm like, I did not attend the group. Everything that I've experienced has been Holy Spirit. But I was able to join my first support group last year.
You're talking about the lie of abortion and the trauma of it too. And I'm thinking, you know, so many women are told that abortion will solve everything. That if they want to graduate high school, if they want to graduate college, they want a career, they want this, they want that, that if they get pregnant, abortion will help with that. And you aren't going to be able to do your career if you have a child. You aren't going to be able to finish college if you have a child. I mean, every one of those are such lies. I know so many women who went ahead and believed that lie and made that choice. And now they have been kept from those very things that industry has told them that they would get. They didn't finish college because they went into trauma, or there was so much shame and so much pain, or they went down a different road. And so I think of the lies that are connected to it, and go back again to say that God does have an amazing and a great plan for your life. Every day He desires to be with you. He desires to lead you and direct you in the things that He has for you. And so we just need to realize God loves us. And so get rid of that shame. Get rid of that pain. Just decide, I'm going to speak out. I'm going to talk to somebody. I'm going to call somebody at Operation Outcry. I'm going to go to the I have a couple things that are possibilities that could happen. I am sure I will remain within, you know, the life sphere. But I have, you know, it's kind of fun as you're talking about the Lord too. I have always just sat before the Lord. You know, sometimes, many times you'll hear people saying, I got to find my purpose. I got to find my purpose. What is my destiny? And I don't know that the Lord ever just sets us down and tells us this is what our purpose is or whatever. But I think that it comes in spending that amazing, intimate time with Him every day. And so sometimes I think our time with the Lord gets a bad rap, you know, when we feel like we're supposed to be living this destiny or living this purpose, and we don't feel like we're doing it. Just rest, yeah. And that one's like the hardest thing to do. But yeah, many times He will. I mean, there are times when there's healing times where He does just want us to rest in Him and just spend time with Him and let that word wash over us and heal us. Or He just wants to speak to us. He wants us to write so that He can minister to us and go back and read it. Or He will give you a name or something, and He'll tell you. What's coming in my head right now is what you were talking about, Molly, about our testimonies. When they write a declaration, that those testimonies and those declarations are used for different bills. In one of my prayer times,
I didn't even know what I was doing, but I remember saying, I have to do this, and I just ran back to that room with those ladies, and that lady said, oh, I've had 3. It's all we're doing. We're just removing a piece of tissue. This is not a big deal. It's painless. They were like, it's not a baby. It's nothing like that. We're just removing a piece of tissue, and then everything's fine. And so I was like, oh, okay. You know, I had no clue what I was about to do.
Right. And like Mary said, you know, was it your boyfriend or no, someone else said you have to have an abortion, and probably planted this idea in your head that, okay, well, this is a solution, you know, I'm in school and whatever. But like Mary said, was it something that you were fully consented, fully knowledgeable about? This is what I'm going to do because I have all the information.
Situation. And then when they called for me to come, I don't remember going down there. I just remember being on the table and them having a stranger hold my hand, and a doctor I've never seen before come in. And when they started the procedure, I had squeezed that stranger's hand so tight, and I wouldn't let go because I was hurting. I was screaming and squeezing her, and she was just trying to pry my fingers off of her, and she couldn't. I just couldn't. I don't know, the pain, the severe, But I remember saying, I have to do this, and I just ran back to that room with those ladies. And that lady said, oh, I've had 3. It's all we're doing. We're just removing a piece of tissue. This is not a big deal. It's painless. They were like, it's not a baby. It's nothing like that. We're just removing a piece of tissue, and then everything's fine. And so I was like, oh, okay. I had no clue what I was about to do.
Right. And like Mary said, was it your boyfriend or no, someone else said you have to have an abortion, and probably planted this idea in your head that, okay, well, this is a solution, and then you're shocked and traumatized.
Yes, and I woke up on a cot, an army cot that was sitting low on the floor, and there was a whole line of army cots, and another girl had been laid down beside me, and I was woozy. I remember I'm getting out of here. I don't care how woozy I am, because they wanted you to stay a certain amount of time. I just remember getting up, and there was a lady sitting at a desk in front of the army cots, and I said, I just need to go. I need to get my stuff and go. Until she just gave me pain pills or whatever it was, medication, and I grabbed it and I just ran out the door, and I was just screaming, bawling. And then that's when my family member that took me just said she said, I can't tell you, she's a very good Christian, and she said, I was under something and when you came out, it all hit me what just happened. It was almost she was being deceived also, under pressure, being pressured by another family member that this is what we had to do. And so I'm literally screaming, bawling on the way home just from the pain I had been through. And so I still didn't know what abortion was until it was, I don't know if it was a month or 2 later. I was driving down the road from college on the interstate where I was, and a radio host, a Christian radio host, has talked about abortion and how one of the procedures that they take the baby and they cut the baby into tiny pieces and suck it out with a vacuum device. And I literally pulled my car over and I think that's when the trauma took me over at that moment and changed me, because it was just, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had no idea that's what had happened.
It is very traumatizing, and that when that reality hits, then all of a sudden now you're left with, how do I process these emotions? How do I process this information? For me, it was completely overwhelming. So I just had to shut it down, process through that.
I don't even remember telling anyone after that, hearing that. I literally don't remember talking about it for 5 years. I didn't think about it. I didn't want to be around, I was uncomfortable around babies and things. But it was not a memory for me for 5 years, because I was so traumatized.
You're right.
And then I started spiraling, in college, with drinking and going out with things I've never done in my life, because I was always wanting to live for the Lord, and I didn't want to do certain things, and I was doing things that were way out of my character. But I didn't know then how traumatized I was, because it was such a secret.
How about you, Mary?
I was thinking the very same thing, Holly and Molly, that it was years before I recognized the connection between having had that abortion and the different ways that I was behaving in my life that was not consistent with who I am. Right. And so I identify with that, Holly, and I just want to acknowledge your courage to come on our podcast. And I know this is not the first time you have talked about your story and given your testimony, so to speak. Can you tell the listeners why it's important for you to speak out about your experience?
Yes, Mary. If I would have heard one testimony, I would have never had an abortion and went through this. So if one person can hear the truth about what abortion is, then it saves one baby, one through this. It's worth it. I just really want the truth to be seen.
Yes, I understand that, Holly, and thank you. I know it's very painful to go back there and remember those things. And I wanted to relay this to the listeners and to the viewers. It doesn't matter how long ago it's been, that particular experience carries a trauma and a pain for a lifetime. And we thank you, Holly, for sharing that. And I had that similar experience. And you just kind of wonder why would the abortion providers not tell you the truth about what they're about to do? You know, I think mine offered me pain medication, but I had to pay extra for it. So I didn't have the money, you know, but they're very deceptive. They just deceive you into
Let's
what's
talk
really
a little
going
bit
to
more
happen.
about Rachel's Vineyard then, and the importance of this ministry program.
Well, Rachel's Vineyard is very unique, and I can tell you why it's probably unique, because when I first made it, people were like, what is this and where did she get it? But I actually had a background in theater. Before I went into psychodrama, I was getting a master's in theater, and there was a lot of things in theater where just to help the actors, they take props and they do things to help ground them. And this all goes back to method acting, but it's really to help ground the people, to reduce anxiety. And I think when people are going through trauma, they need grounding resources, but nobody was really using them back then. So all these exercises for grieving and sort of like spiritual rituals to facilitate grief are really what makes Rachel's Vineyard very different than like a Bible study or even take a story, we bring it to life. We enter it into it through a meditation, and then when I say we act it out, I mean you respond as if you're in the story. And there would be a pastor present who would stand in the place of Christ. So the blind man, you'd say, the facilitator would go up and say, you know, Christine, take courage, he's calling you. And then she would be invited to say, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And then the pastor would say, touching her head, what do you want me to do for you? So there's grace through everything that we're touching and feeling that brings it to life, makes it real. The burdens that they carry, and they're really designed to create insight and to speak, to allow the soul to speak its truth. It's hurt, it's pain, it's grieving. Go enough into very gentle that you're bringing it forward. And then these meditations with music and soft lighting and all the grieving rituals, they play a very big role in helping keep the person in the present moment so that they're not going to relive their trauma and, you know, go through it all again. And we just break it down and dip in and out of it. And these days now, all the latest trauma researchers are speaking about these things that we've been doing for 40 years. So it's kind of validating the process. And it's very different and very unique kind of an experience.
Wow, awesome. Yes, it is different. I haven't heard this part about the program, you know, and I haven't been through one yet, but it is on my bucket list.
They actually show dissociation take place in the brain. They actually show the amygdala, which is the fear center, kind of lights up and gets very active and reactive, and the frontal cortex shuts down, and that's our ability to be rational. It's our ability to integrate cognitive and emotional feelings and thoughts. So all of this goes offline when people are dealing with trauma, and that's why talk therapy doesn't work. It's valid, but for a victim of trauma or complex PTSD, and there's a new diagnosis now that I think we can use. There's a new diagnosis called prolonged grieving disorder, which perfectly fits. Sort of like post-trauma. If you don't meet all the criteria, it can fit that. So that in our retreat, we sort of act out some of the stories in Scripture.
Kevin, won't you speak into that about, we know this is important for women to go through, and I'm kind of jumping around on our questions a little bit, but
speak into it, and why did you get involved with this, and speak to how it affects men and the importance of men going through healing.
Yes, well, when I initially first attended the retreat just to learn about the program, in fact, it's kind of an interesting background. I was working at the time when Teresa first took the support group model of Rachel's Vineyard and put it into the weekend retreat format. I was working as a director of a maternity shelter for women who were facing unplanned pregnancy. And they were coming from very difficult, volatile family backgrounds, and they were in desperate straits. And so we offered them an opportunity to get their lives together and stay there for 6 months with their baby after the child was born. So we had a huge former convent and a whole floor that wasn't being used, big giant living rooms. So Teresa, with her, she's a visionary. She probably saw this well before I did, but she asked if we could use part of the building to have the first Rachel's Vineyard retreat. So providentially, there was a couple of men on the retreat from the beginning of Teresa's retreats. And correct me if I'm wrong, but she was open to having men attend, couples attend, grandparents attend, which I think was very unique about her approach. So I had an opportunity to hear men go. I had an opportunity to see them come in, look very scared, like everybody feels nervous, but they were scared. But then I saw as they began to go through those meditations that Teresa talked about, and their defenses are lowered, and maybe the denial and intellectualization we can do as men to kind of push away our feelings or rationalize them or dismiss them. It very gently allows you to enter in, encounter Jesus in the Word, the support of the community gathered to kind of take you through that process. And then I saw that when they had an opportunity to speak and share their story, they had very powerful feelings about their role in the abortion. Very powerful, often conflictual. You mentioned anger. Anger was one of the ways I saw men deal with their grief and pain. What was very beautiful was to see them work through those painful feelings. It educated me that something I didn't know, which is men are very deeply impacted by their participation in the death of the child, even if they felt relief at the time of the decision. Even if they rationalize and maybe push their partner to say, look, we're not ready for this baby right now, and this is the reasons why we should have an abortion, or very aggressively pushed it. I saw how that wounded them, and they came to recognize, even as they sometimes tried to justify, as the Lord worked on them, and they began to be more honest with what was happening in their father's heart, and recognize that they were a father who experienced abortion loss as a parent. And then they engaged that child through the retreat process, their son or daughter. By the end of the retreat, they're writing very beautiful letters, healing letters of love to that child, regret and grief, but also love and the hope of being able to reconcile with that child, with God, and see that child hopefully one day in heaven.
Hello, and welcome to More to the Story with Molly White. I'm so glad you tuned in again this week for another incredible show about really how abortion hurts women and men and families. This is what More to the Story is all about, is to, expose the lies of the abortion industry, to talk about the trauma that follows an abortion decision and how it affects men, the mother, the father, the siblings, the grandparents, all the family members in society, and to, reach out to women who may be considering an abortion and encourage them to choose life for their children, and to provide hope and healing. There is hope and healing and forgiveness after an abortion experience. And so that's what this program and this show is all about. And we're going to be coming to you week after week, hoping to educate, to motivate, and to heal, and to give women and men an opportunity to share their abortion trauma. And so I'm going to introduce my wonderful, awesome co-host, Mary Browning. So come on in, Mary, and say hello.
Hello, Molly. Thank you for having me again today. I so enjoy doing the podcast with you.
Oh, me too. You're a wonderful co-host, and I'm so glad to have you on. So I'm glad you're here with us today.
Thank you. If you are listening and you find yourself being triggered, it upsets you, what you're hearing, that is really just an invitation to step into some healing, whether that's the first step you take for healing or whether it's a step along the way. We really want to encourage you to get healing. There is hope. And you can find healing resources on operationoutcry.org. So thank you, Molly.
Well, thank you, Mary. And that's right. You know, if you do feel triggered, if you get angry or emotional, you know, we want you to stay tuned. We want you to hear these testimonies, because these are stories that can relate to you and you can relate to. You know, you're not alone in your suffering if you've had an abortion in your past. And you don't have to stay stuck in your suffering. There is hope and healing for you, like there was for me and Mary and